going to be focusing tonight on the refugee issues and various aspects that refugees deal with. In particular, we'll be discussing with our special guest, Lorraine D'Alessio, a business and immigration attorney here in Los Angeles, about the challenges that a refugee faces trying to get into the US or wherever they may be, how they can deal with that. And I believe we are, is the answer to that. Yes, okay. So I'm wearing a few hats here if I seem a little distracted for a moment. On the lower part of your screen, if you're watching on a computer or laptop, it's best on a computer or laptop. Cell phones can be a little bit difficult, but on the lower part of your screen, you may see a scrolling piece that talks about where, if you want to donate to assist the refugees, wherever they may be, there's two organizations that we're collecting money for that you could contribute to tonight. One is the WinnickFoundation, and the Foundation is working with various partners. Your donations would go directly to help the people still in Ukraine or those that have fled the violence. They will be contributing 100% of funds raised to one of four agencies: Save the Children, the Ukrainian World Congress, the International Rescue Committee, and Core Response. And the mission of the Winnick Foundation is for a safe world in which every woman and child can thrive. Their mission, that's their vision. Their mission at the Winnick Foundation, they are a grant-making organization that supports access to education, healthcare, and shelter for women and children around the world. And they're currently supporting organizations that are providing humanitarian assistance to the Ukrainian people affected by the horrible conflict that's going on. So it's as some of you know from being on our previous conversations, the situation in Ukraine, for what we see here in the US, seems that they're doing relatively well, but that's pretty amazing to think that that's even possible given such a blanket destruction of so much of the country. There's currently estimated to be over 12 million refugees, about half of whom are displaced in Ukraine, and about half that have dispersed to other countries, mostly surrounding Ukraine. Poland has been the biggest recipient, with over 3.5 million of the refugees coming into Poland, with Romania accepting over 900,000 refugees. Russia has about 800,000, most of whom probably didn't want to go there. And then Hungary, Moldova, Slovakia, Belarus, etc. Some have gone further into Europe. Some have tried to come to the US, and it's a big challenge. So before I get into a bit more information about what other countries are doing, let me introduce our guest tonight, one of our particular guests, Lorraine D'Alessio, to maybe share just some introductory comments about how what are the challenges for those from Ukraine that are trying to get into the US. You want to introduce yourself and share just briefly, and then we'll get back to more comments.
Certainly. Thank you so much again for having me. It's such an honor and a pleasure to be here with you all today. This is such a profound event in our history, and one that hopefully we will not see repeated. And it's all about what we do right now, feet on the ground to help jump in. No time like the present. So here we go. What comes to mind first for a lot of those that have been displaced, I mean, for the United Nations, we have reports that there's about 6 million Ukrainians right now that are out of their homes and left Ukraine and gone to neighboring countries, and another 6.5 million people that are thought to be displaced actually inside the country, which of course is quite war torn. And traditional routes you tend to look at refugee status, asylum, but the very sad reality is that asylum requires someone to already be in the United States and to have experienced persecution or have a well-founded fear of persecution based on very, very narrow grounds. Even for someone who qualifies, it can often take many years for their asylum case to be adjudicated. So asylum seekers often feel like they are in limbo for quite a long time. I believe employment authorization cards right now are clocking at about 1 year, close to 1 year for issuance. So if you can imagine. Another option called humanitarian parole that has been heavily used by individuals fleeing from, for example, Afghanistan in the summer of 2021. USCIS was extremely backlogged with these requests. Therefore, the priority, wherever possible, is to be thinking about actually non-immigrant visa options where US petitions could permit even premium processing or expedited basis. We really want to be thinking about these ways to bring people in. It's a bit of a out-of-the-box, creative, looking at each case, not a cookie-cutter approach, and that's where lawyers are coming together and looking at all these cases and determining what would be the best way and most efficient way to bring people through. But what's most important to know is that there are these ways, and they do exist over and above, humanitarian routes, which unfortunately we're experiencing to be quite backlogged. What is good news about the Ukraine is that it is one of the treaty countries that counts for something called an E2 investor visa. So for those that could potentially be coming in to start a company or be an employee of a company that is already headed up by a Ukrainian national, this could be a way, to be getting work authorization and work authorization that can be actually renewed indefinitely, 2 years at a time. There's always stepping stones. So not everybody may qualify to put an actual monetary investment. However, there are many, many employers out there that already have demonstrated an understanding and a respect for the talent and skill set that Ukrainian people have brought and have really had a tremendous, profound, positive impact on the United States for industries like technology, and especially in the field of coding, as well as the entertainment business, the arts, athletics, sports. So it's not just one type of business. It could be a variety of different businesses. And
Lorraine, let me just pause you there for a moment. You've shared a lot already, and I want you to share more. There's a lot of information for some of our listeners perhaps to digest. You've mentioned a lot of information already, which is great to be so eloquent and so concise. I do want to take a moment and introduce some people that are here from Ukraine and may have either some questions or certainly some comments about what the life is like right now for them and what they're familiar with from their perspective on the immigration issue. So I want to take a moment and introduce Alina and Alana. And if you are unmuted, that's great. If you're not unmuted, please unmute. And perhaps Kent can bring them in. I'm not sure which, if I see a Zoom user and I see, well, certainly I see Natalia may also want to share as well when you unmute. Thank you for being here, Natalia. And is Mara, who is the other person? We have, well, go ahead. If you're one of those two people, please start speaking, then I'll know where you are. Anna, I think you're in a pink sweater.
Yeah, that's me. I am not in Ukraine. I'm in California, but Lena is, and she's wearing the beautiful fur coat. So we're going to let her.
The Zoom user is Lena. Okay, great. Well, go ahead, Anna and Lena. Why don't you both share a little bit? Go ahead and unmute, Anna. Anna, you're muted right now. You can unmute.
Mhm.
And go ahead, Lena.
Yes, I'm here.
We can hear you. What was your day like today? What's going on for you? Are you in Kyiv or where are you?
No, I'm at Lithuania now,
You say
not in
what?
Kyiv.
Say again?
In Kaunas city, Lithuania.
In Lithuania.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you say something about how you got there and a little bit about what your experience has been so far and that of your family and friends?
I'm here with part of my family, with my mom, with my sister, daughter, and my nephew. Part of my family are still in Kyiv, and they will be in Kyiv.
I understand that a large portion of the population has returned to Kyiv. How are they able to get lodging?
A lot of people return to Kyiv, but it's still dangerous, as I think. And there are some problems with the fuel, with the logistic problems. So not all markets are open. A lot of problems they're faced now.
What is the biggest challenge that you face right now?
All my life is challenged right now.
Yes, I'm
I
sure.
would say. I still working remotely, but it's too difficult now because a lot of difficulties on the market. I work at the insurance business, so we faced a lot of difficulties.
And are the people that you're talking with and your friends that you have there that have, I assume, are there some friends that have come from Ukraine that you have with you in Lithuania?
No, they didn't.
Are you pretty much by yourself with?
A lot of my friends, most of my friends are still in Ukraine, and they don't plan to leave Ukraine.
And do you plan to go back soon?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Well, God bless. And Anna, how do you know Lena?
We actually met through social media, also with Kent, and I just immediately started talking with her, and we got along so well. And I just wanted to mention like how courageous and brave she was, because she had sent her daughter to live with her sister where she is now, and then decided to take her mom in the car by herself and drive. I think it was for 3 days, right? And that alone is very brave to do. And so she's been staying with her sister, I think, and her nephew. So she has her mom with her, but her father is still back in Ukraine because he's in the age range where they have to stay. So obviously that's very worrisome. And it's been really fascinating speaking with her because she does work in the insurance industry, and imagine what it's like to be working with insurance now in Ukraine. And we were talking about all the times when we sign insurance documents, how it says like, oh, in case of war, this is excluded, and we always just sign it away like that would never happen. And here we are today. So just I mean, she can talk more about it, of course, but she's in charge of like risk assessment and things like that, and what a job to do. And also going forward, how things will be repaired is like quite a spot to be in. So I think she's lucky to be working remotely, but obviously it has so many challenges, but she's such a positive attitude, and we just share a lot of messages back and forth, which I think helps a lot. And she just says like how brave the people are there, but also how a lot of people aren't leaving. So it's hard to assess whether to leave or go or when to come back, of course. So, but yeah, I hope I said things okay, Lita.
It made perfect sense to me, and I just would double down on your comment, Anna, about the courage that Lena and others have displayed to go through what you've gone through the last few months. I've imagined for myself if all of a sudden I had to gather up a bag or a suitcase of some belongings and that's it, and and then walk, you know, for walk or drive for days to get to some sense of safety. And, you know, I can't imagine just the faith and courage that it's taken you and your countrymen to survive this situation. I'm curious to know what's going on as far as the peacekeeping world. I think we've been joined by Professor Lello, is that right? With the, I think from Malta, is that correct? Is there Professor Lello with us here?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, yes.
Go ahead, we can hear you, but I can't see you, but we can hear you. It says M-A-R-R-A in the corner. Is that Professor Lello?
Yes, it is Barry. Barry, he's there. Can you hear us all right, Professor?
Hello, yes.
Again, we can't see you and we can hear you when you speak, but go ahead and tell us a little bit about the peacekeeping situation, if you could.
No,
It may be better if you
because the connection,
turn
the
off the video.
connection.
Turn off your video, that might help. The bandwidth might be too much with the video. Go ahead. Go ahead,
Can
sir.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello, sir. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me properly now?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So we have an organization which is registered under the Maltese law. And just recently we went to Ukraine with sponsored bus to pick up people from Ukraine. And the situation was not like they are showing nowadays to everyone. It's a bit different.
Can you explain the difference?
Yes, there are the instruction almost everywhere outside the Kiev city, which is the capital. And people, it's... Come la situazione in Ucraina?
Al centro-sud non c'è niente, la vita è normale come quella di tutti i giorni.
The only place where there is a bit of living, it's like the south center of the city.
Are there peacekeepers in the area?
Alla fine della Romania, andando dentro per 150 km non c'è niente, c'è la vita normale.
We went north of the entrance from Romania, from Siret, and we went up to 150 kilometers north of the territorial contingency.
So what
Yes.
What do you are you dealing with mostly the local populations there, or are you dealing with people that are that have gone outside the country?
Abbiamo interpellato più di 1400 persone e su 1400 persone solamente 80 hanno accettato di lasciare l'Ucraina.
Out of 1,400 people contacted over there, only 80 decided to leave the country. So most of them are standing united in the country.
And are there particular needs other than military support that are particularly desperately needed?
Alimentari e generi di prima necessità.
What they mostly need it's food and medicine, but there are quite deliveries at the moment. The problem is that, you know, in some places where the situation is a bit different, it's hard to deliver them. That's the thing.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, what would obviously the end of the war would make the biggest difference, but in terms of people that are looking to get back into the country, or people that are looking to immigrate to other countries, what do you see over the, maybe the next, can you even see over the next few weeks or the next few months, any particular, is this situation as it exists right now, do you see it continuing like this, or how do you see it going?
Sono 2 settimane che ogni giorno c'è la corrente opposta, cioè tutta la gente sta tornando tutta quanto in Ucraina.
It's since 2 weeks, a lot of people, they decided also to go back in the country. Whoever was outside, they went back to the country to give an help, to give support to the country.
E questo l'abbiamo visto noi dal vivo, perché la televisione queste cose non le fa vedere solamente le cose che non vanno bene.
And we saw it with our own eyes, because TV sometimes doesn't show the reality of the fact of what is really happening over there. So some of the things can really see if you really experience it, and you will be there, you have been there.
Where are you, if you're able to tell me, where are you located right now?
A Siret, ai confini tra...
No, dove sei adesso, Malta?
Sì.
I have been to the entrance of Siret through Romania, but at the moment I just returned to Malta. I'm on the island at the moment. So we're planning to go back there in another 2 weeks' time.
And are there still people at the steel plant?
There is few, but very little. There isn't much at the moment.
In una giornata sono arrivate 5 persone.
The numbers are much lower of people going out of the country at the moment.
Well, sir, I just wish you send prayers and my best thoughts for the work that you're doing, and that you continue to do that work. I wanted to get to some comments from some other people that are with us today as well, and you'd be welcome to somehow or other indicate to me if as you hear the rest of the conversation, if you want to share something further, by all means, please don't hesitate to start
Just
talking.
to let you know that Professor Mara said thank you so much for the participation to the meeting.
Yes, absolutely. And I wish we had hours to talk more about.
Thank you. And to Lorraine D'Alessio for inviting us.
If you can stay on for a while, that would be great. I saw one hand come up. Maurice, you need to unmute. There you go.
Heard today that Finland has asked to join NATO. And I'm just wondering what Ukraine's thoughts are with regard to joining NATO at this point. Up until now, they didn't want to make Russia angry, but they can't get more angry than they are now. So is there anything afoot for that? I don't know who has the answer to that, but.
Well, I don't have an answer for it. I don't know if any of our other participants here have a comment. They're welcome to unmute and share if they do. I know that Putin has already basically threatened that as a possibility, that he would obviously rather not see that go forward. I'm curious if, first of all, Terry's S21, I'm not sure who that is. If you could be sure to mute so any background noise doesn't come through. Appreciate that. And Natalia, would you care to share some comments? Either, I think you're driving, so be safe. Maybe you can.
I'm sorry, I am driving, yes. But it's a pleasure to be part of this meeting, and I am carefully listening to everything. So, but I am driving.
Would you care to share? Would you care to maybe introduce yourself or what your role is or was, and perhaps an answer to what you think would be the response regarding Finland's thoughts of joining NATO?
Honestly, I am supporting this idea. I think it's a great. And it's a perfect timing for them to make this decision, and hopefully everything goes well with this. So it will show Putin that he cannot just do this, like horrible blackmailing to all countries around in Europe. So I just really hope that it'll stop him from threatening other countries. That's what he's been doing for the past. So I support this idea. I hope Sweden will join as well. And again, I really hope that Ukraine will be a part of NATO at some point, because we proved that we deserve it.
Yeah, no question. When you were the Consul General of Ukraine in DC several years ago, what was it like in terms of immigrating then? And what do you hear from people now about the challenges they experience in that area of immigrating?
You know what? I was a Consul General, we're talking about 20 years ago. So it was completely different time. It was kind of similar because we're talking about 90s, where was a lot of uncertainty. But like some people immigrated, but lots of people were willing to stay and make some difference. And like we were so happy to get this independence. So it was very good time for like for people to try to build up something different than the Soviet Union. And as we can see, we are very different from Russia. Right now, as like I speak to many people in Ukraine, at least people I spoke to, they really build the country. They hope that it will happen. And I really support this idea. It's very nice. But whoever wanted to immigrate, I can understand this as well, because like people are concerned. Nobody knows at this time. Nobody knows how long it will take. Unfortunately, it looks like it'll.
We lost your moment there, but Natalia, thank you very much for your comments and being able to be with us.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
There's a little bit of technical.
And I'm sorry for the reception.
Yes, it's a little bit in and out, but we're getting most of your comments. I appreciate your effort to be with us tonight, and I thank Tatiana Vozniuk for introducing us and allowing you to be with us tonight, welcoming you tonight. I want to just remind people that I think there's a lower third or a scroll across the bottom of the screen mentioning if you want to make a contribution to the WinnickFoundation to support any of the organizations that they're supporting, such as Save the Children, the Ukrainian World Congress, the International Rescue Committee, or Core Response. 100% of what goes in tonight will be going to those organizations. Or also scrolling across the bottom is the website for the UNHCR. That's the United Nations High Commission for Refugees.org. And by the way, on their website, it mentions that $10 buys a refugee girl a kit with a basic hygiene supplies. A $35 contribution can provide 2 weeks of food for a refugee family. And then, of course, other amounts that make a difference as well. So that's so don't hesitate to try to make a difference that way. It's much better to try to send some money than to try to box up some supplies and hope that your box gets to where you want it to go. That's as far as what I know. If anybody on this call has a suggestion for other ways of shipping supplies, of medical supplies or food products into Ukraine, feel free to unmute and share your comments. And I appreciate that. Meanwhile, I'm going to go back to Lorraine D'Alessio. I don't see anybody waving that they want to share a comment. This is a conversation for peace, so you're all welcome to share some views, thoughts, opinions, suggestions. the United Nations Association, which I'm also a part of, and I see people here from the United Nations Association. The UN Association is working with chapters all across the country. In fact, United Nations Association chapters outside the country, which are part of WFUNA, that's the World Federation of United Nations Associations, is raising money and collecting goods, food and clothing in many parts of the US to get to Ukraine or to get to Poland and other areas where the refugees are and need assistance. So having said that, was a person from the United Nations wanting to make a quick comment before we go to Lorraine? I wasn't sure. I saw somebody. I thought that I don't see the names. I just see United Nations Association. I'm not sure who that woman is on the red couch. All right, we'll go to Lorraine and some comments on what you're hearing from people, what the challenges are. I know it's a very lengthy process. What do you suggest for someone who wants to be immigrating to the US currently? You're muted.
Apologies.
Thank you.
Okay, so they can take advantage of a new program that Biden has now initiated as of April 22nd, which is called Uniting Ukrainians, and this is to allow for travel for the Ukrainians actually into the United States. There's a limited number.
Lorraine, hold on a second. Are you on a speakerphone? Are you on a speaker? It's something's reverberating back. It's a little bit difficult to hear you clearly.
Really? Oh boy. No, just
okay. Well, continue then.
Okay. All right. So the United States has created an online portal known as United Ukraine, which was just recently launched. Of course, we know that the war broke out in February 2021, and now this portal has just been released in April. And as part of President Joe Biden's goal to bring about 100,000 people who would like to leave Ukraine into the United States, and to allow for smooth travel here. Now, we should be aware that the consular situation right now is very tough. Getting appointments anywhere in this region for Eastern Europeans, Russians, extremely difficult, if not impossible. And so the way that our firm has been helping people is actually through third country national appointments. So it is good news that Biden is helping to facilitate, a safe passage for a limited number of people to get to the United States. However, this is in visitor status. Once arriving, they can attempt to access something called temporary protective status, which has also been initiated. But again, you have to be safely in the United States before you can access that and be able to achieve temporary status in the United States that is looked at for 1 year at a time. So it is limited in that way. So this is why, sort of circling back on my earlier comment, that it's very important for, to think of lawyers like ourselves as being on your A team to help out here. Many employers are quite interested and are actively helping Ukrainian nationals find jobs in the US and employing, as well as assisting in even bringing into upper tiers of management, as well as even ownership of companies. So looking at other options, for example, if there is a niche or a specialty that in this particular case, we want to look at it case by case, there is, then perhaps we could be seeing extraordinary ability. There's an extraordinary ability arm for the US system here and bringing people here. If that means that there's a distinction in what they do in their field, then we want to look at that industry and see whether there could be a pathway that it's quite efficient. If there is, you're looking at a 2-week turnaround and processing the case with US immigration, and then the difficult part, which is of course to help them through the consular process to bring them in. However, good attorneys have been successful in doing so. So that's one way. Another, I mentioned the investor visa route, but there's also, again, the H-1B that is coming up. I know it is for next year, obviously April. However, there could be those that already had at one point an H-1B, and we want to be looking at those cases to see whether there could be some time captured and they can in fact be returning. So, but investor routes like the E2 are quite popular with Ukrainian nationals, and creative ways can be employed to help to bring Ukrainians through as either specialized essential employees in the business, or in fact joining the employer ranks of the company and the ownership side of the company. So, and I've seen everything from schools, academies, to fashion design houses, to tech companies now, to musicians and artists coming through. So we're literally seeing, we are seeing, hundreds of cases of this actually working in practice. So I think that how we want to be thinking about how to really help with travel arrangements as well. We received very good news that we don't have to be concerned about COVID vaccinations or negative COVID tests for Ukrainian nationals as they come through. In fact, that requirement has been waived to help with the expediency of travel. And logistically, it can be quite challenging to get those tests in order and do all of that. So that was good news that we also received that as well. You really also want to be considering intercorporate transfers as well. Again, looking at the history of each case, the resume, and each and every entry of if there's been any connection to a multinational company where they were operating internationally, and if in fact there was any connection into the US. And options can be laid out potentially through this way too.
Let's get, again, great content of information. I see a question from Anna, a hand raised to ask a question here, if we could sort of interrupt for that, and then we'll go back to other comments.
Yeah, awesome, Lorraine. I love everything that you're talking about. In terms of the E2, obviously, I know there's that minimum investment of $150,000. And does that just cover the one person? Because although that's an opportunity, that's great, and it does last 2 years, that only brings one individual over, right? So I think, does that include them and their family, or their mother, or their child, or something like that? Or is it just for that individual? And can they bring people underneath them once they get the E2?
So you can actually register a whole company. So it doesn't have to just be the founder of the company. It could be really indefinite number of people that are in that company, from essential support people. Indeed, there is the principal, so the majority shareholder of the company. However, you can also be bringing in many essential support people. And by registering the company, which is a very careful petition that's put through and prepared, that can open up a lot of doors. There's a lot of family-run businesses that start off that way. Now, 150,000 is a cookie cutter, kind of cookie cutter approach to investor immigration that a lot of immigration lawyers kind of default to, but that's not always the case. Things can be argued. And again, we want to be looking at all kinds of things, from what kind of payroll company is being used, what kind of investments are being made into infrastructure for the business, what type of business is it? There's different ways to argue it. And it's also very, very important what consular post that individual who's representing for that company is going to go through. So I cannot stress that enough. And so I think that to answer your question in short, there's more options than just for one person, and it can help not only multiples within the company, but also their entire family. And of course the spouse, if there's a married spouse in the picture from whoever's an employee or a principal of the holding visas, then they get blanket work authorization to do in the US. So it opens up a lot of great.
And does the 150 have to come from them, or can it come from other sources?
It doesn't have to be 150,
Okay.
It could be 150. I've gotten cases approved for a lot less. It's all about how you present the evidence, how you're arguing the case. And, there's a lot of variables and factors that come in. So you want to be assessing it case by case, yeah.
What I hear and what you're saying, Lorraine, and thank you, Anna, for those questions, is it's very complicated, convoluted, and tricky. And trying to do it on your own without the assistance of a qualified counsel like Lorraine, it will take probably much, much longer if it's effective at all. And so, Lorraine?
Yeah, I would just, again, we're looking at options on where to bring Ukrainians through. It's obviously less ideal to do anything through East Central Europe. So, and you know, I think the turnaround times are quite good with some of those options. And so, I mean, I've been able to process cases in 4 to 12 weeks, everybody in. So, you know, I think, you know, you want to be working with a practitioner who really understands the system and has, you know, the experience, the expertise, and the team that can carry you through from A to Z. So, but I mean, we're here to help the Ukrainian people. We understand the circumstances. We have very big hearts. I mean, I'm an immigrant myself. You know, my grandfather came to Canada at age 16 with literally nothing and lived in the basement of a church for years and years until he could get his start. I mean, I think we all have these stories. We are here to help. That's why we're on this call. I would just say, you know, investor visas, this is a great option to look at, but I would start the conversation with the attorney so that we can look at different ways that we can tackle it. And we may even, look, I have the stats. There are literally thousands and thousands of employers in California, across the United States, who have already helped Ukrainians, who are already hiring Ukrainians, who are already actively feet on the ground doing stuff. And, you know, so the investor visa is great, but this candidate may have an option to actually be looking at, you know, an L1, you know, depending on the circumstances, or potentially an H-1B down the road, or potentially be brought in, you know, as an essential support worker, or who knows, even under the international entrepreneur rule. So I think it's all about kind of beginning that conversation, looking at the case, and not being afraid to just be super transparent about the circumstances in all regards, and then we can help, you know, so.
Well, it's great to know that type of advocacy is available. And again, Lorraine, you might want to put in the chat your contact email for others that are on this call, anyone else on this call that would like to be kept informed of future conversations for peace or other conversations along these lines, to add your contact information into the chat, and that way we can keep you posted and share that as well. I was looking, as in addition to the challenges of getting into the US and the number of years that it could take for that to take place, I was looking to see what some other countries are doing currently. The EU has granted Ukrainians who flee the war a blanket right to stay and work throughout its 27 member nations for up to 3 years. And that's rather interesting. In Ukraine, the UN is working alongside other organizations to provide help. They're providing cash to people for basics like food and rent, delivering supplies from west to east. It's obviously very, very difficult to be doing that, to get supplies into the eastern areas especially. But those supplies include food, tarps for damaged homes, the homes that have been damaged by shelling, providing folding beds to people in bomb shelters. The UN's been setting up reception and transit points for internally displaced people. So there's a lot of work that's going on. The government in the UK created a program, Homes for Ukraine, which was slow to get off the ground, but seems to be working better now. And they've issued the UK has issued over 100,000 visas through a couple of different programs, and about 132,000 applications. So there's a lot of work that's attempting to be done to make a difference. And for me, it's kind of seems like a bit of a drop in the bucket. There's so much work for the refugees that have gone out of the country, and for the 6.5 million or more that are displaced in country. And you know, the sad part about it is it only represents, this represents a relatively small percentage of total refugees. Before the war broke out, there was nearly 80 million refugees in the world, the largest number ever. And 50% of them are children. There's estimated to be one person displaced every 2 seconds in the world. This is on this planet Earth. It's just really a shame, the number of the quantity of refugees on the planet in 2022. It's just a shame.
And if I could very make a couple of comments on that.
Go ahead, Lorraine.
My law firm, we are a majority women, actually law firm, and there's a very sensitive topic for us that we do a lot of charity and pro bono work around, and that is combating human trafficking. And unfortunately, there has been reports of targeting of those that are fleeing, we're trying Ukraine right now, and being exploited, and in fact suffering with, obviously being victims of human trafficking. And I think that there are some country examples that are quite wonderful to look at and really, I think the United States desperately needs to move quickly on. And that is not just about helping to facilitate mobility and protecting maybe temporary status into the United States, but what about helping to facilitate and accelerate education and helping to create more job programs. I know that Germany has been having a great success with this. I know that the UK has been looking at like a family system where people can live rent-free with certain under certain circumstances, certain households that are safe. And I mean, just paying rent. I mean, the system that we have right now. I mean, this is wonderful that Biden has opened up to help with mobility into the U.S. and of course, then perhaps they can access TPS status, temporary protective status. However, what do you do during the interim when you do not have funds to be able to support yourself and your family? You're not able to get work authorization yet. Potentially, maybe you can't get the E2 visa, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe you can't get the O1 right away. So I think that, what perhaps can come out of this discussion as well is looking at, some options that other countries have been quite efficient and effective at employing, and and combating a really horrific situation that should never be happening, which is where these fleeing victims of war are being targeted in human trafficking. So I just wanted to make those comments. Stephen Smith, who's on the line with us, he's a very senior attorney with D'Alessio Law Group. He has a client who just returned from the Ukraine and is the author of an absolutely outstanding documentary on the Ukraine and some of the history that exists between Putin and Ukraine, actually. And I think that Stephen, if you could share with us the name of this documentary, but I think it also helps to highlight exactly the issue that I'm talking about right now. And I really think that, these immigration policies, it's so much more than just the logistics of a visa. It's about tackling a global, massive problem that should just never be happening and never exist. Stephen, do you know the name of that documentary, if you're still with us?
And Steve, please feel free to unmute. And then if you want to share what the documentary is and maybe a moment or two about that or other comments, we'd welcome that. Go ahead, Steve, just please unmute.
I don't know if he's...
He sees me and he's waving, but you need to unmute, Steve. Cannot hear you. Are you able to unmute, Steve? Let me know when you unmute. We'll come back to you, Steve. As soon as you unmute, we'll come back to you. All right. So meanwhile, if there's anyone else that's on the call that would like to either share a comment, a thought, opinion, a view, that could be whether it be our friend from the UN Association or Pat or Ro. Pat, go ahead.
Could we please have Lorraine's phone number one more time? I didn't get it.
It's in the chat, and verbally it's 310-909-3934.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And does anybody else have any thoughts, comments, questions, opinions, what you'd like to see as a solution?
Barry, actually, maybe Kent could unmute Stephen. He's showing me that it says that it's unable to access the microphone. Is it possible for us to unmute him from our side?
I don't think so. I asked him to unmute. Let me see if I can ask to unmute. I'm not able to unmute him as the host. Kent, are you able to unmute him on Zoom? I don't think so. Yeah. Steve, if you're not able to, I don't know why you wouldn't be able to unmute. It's at his end, Lorraine. Seems to be at his end. Is he? The best thing I would suggest would be for him to log off and log back in.
Right.
But he's still muted. So, is he near you, in an office near you?
No, he's remote. However, let me try something. Stephen, can you hear us? I have him on audio. Perhaps that will work.
Well,
I think it would be really great to have this because hi.
The name of the film is Winter on Fire. It was done in 2015, but it's not me. They have me muted, and it will not let me unmute.
Okay. They're trying on their end. It's called Winter of Fire.
No, Winter on Fire.
Winter on Fire.
In 2015, Evgeny was nominated for an Academy Award for it.
Did you hear that?
The name of it again is what?
Winter
on Fire?
Fire by Evgeny. His last name, Stephen?
Okay.
Afkhanezy.
I'm the host, Steve. I apologize. I'm not able to unmute you. I've sent you a message to unmute, and you said you've unmuted, but it's not occurring that way because I still see the microphone occurring as muted. So.
No, but it will not let me unmute. It says unable to unmute, and every time I try it, it tells me I'm not allowed to do it.
The only thing I could think of to resolve it would be for you to log off and log back in and see if that will help you. Otherwise, you can talk through Lorraine's phone now and share other comments because we can hear you fine.
Okay, by the way, one thing that you should know is that in addition to Winter on Fire, okay, that Evgeny Afkhanezy has been for 40 days filming a new documentary concerning the current war. He's been in the line of fire and has been wearing, Kevlar. He's been in that kind of situation. He's back in the United States today, but he's been principally in the Ukraine during the last 40-day period during the war.
Interesting. Well, Steve, thank you for your comments and for sharing that information with you. Any other particular comments, Steve, in terms of how the refugees can be best served?
Well, I think that the key thing that we think about in the United States is how many of them can we get in and what super efforts do we need to make in order to do it? Because our laws and our current political situation is one in which the president probably unable to do all the things that he would like to do. And therefore, we have, I think, some more difficult problems in this country, and which is why that the kind of solutions that Lorraine is suggesting are necessary, and it really is a superhuman effort. But after all, this is a place that many people would like to be in, and there are ways to do it, and she has been successful in helping many of them. But it's an individual effort. It's not one of those kind of things where you're bringing in 100,000 at a time. Although she's just expressed, and I think articulately, the situation in which where you do a company, you can bring a lot of people with that company, and that may be the most intelligent way for Ukrainians who have organizations or large families with the ability to make relatively minimal investments get into the United States in a relatively short period of time. Those are my comments.
That's really useful and great, and I certainly agree in terms of certainly Lorraine's comments have been really useful and concise and to the point and very eloquent as well. I appreciate both of you sharing your comments. Does anyone have any, we're going to be wrapping up here in the next couple of minutes. I'm wondering if anyone that hasn't shared would like to share any comments, whether it be Bonnie or Ro or Dr. William Tain or Mr. Gaines or Portia or Tatiana, and David Campbell, Daniel Atwater, anyone else care to share any comments about the situation, what you might suggest or what you would like to see how you might like to see the situation resolved? Anna, anything else for you?
No, I think what I hear just firsthand from people who are there in Ukraine, and we have all these legal ways and stuff, it's just so overwhelming. Like, where do they start? And I think, it's easy for us to say, okay, do this thing or like apply for this visa or 12 months or 6 months, whatever. But they're sitting there with like luggage in a home wanting to go back, which we would want to go back to our homes. So I think there is this in-between area of like, how do you get from A to B? And also just the shock of having to start a new life somewhere else or even move. There's just a lot. So I think it keeps people a little bit in a frozen zone, as Lena was even saying, even to leave the country is still very overwhelming. So I think, there has to be something to support people during that time and just very easily find steps that they can do and also kind of handheld them through the process as opposed to just being like, okay, do this checklist to do a visa. I mean, it's a lot of work. So I don't know. I think that's the part that just feels overwhelming for me right now. I wish there was more that I can do.
Perhaps I can weigh in. So I think what would be the most productive thing, if you know any folks that are thinking that they may depart even for a temporary time period while they sort of regroup, maybe get alternative sources of income outside Ukraine before they come back into the Ukraine, also maybe sending back funds to help to support others that are back in the Ukraine. I would say they should indicate their last known location, whether they have any other citizenships, whether they have a visa, ever had a visa in the United States before, what category was it in, whether they were aware of any other family members or whether there were any other employees or contractors within their network that were, U.S. bound or U.S. connected. And if they have, and then what contact information of those people are, as well as UC Davis has created a very safe and reliable storing and sharing of documents system for Ukrainian people called A26 Backpack, which is free. And documents can be assembled to share with legal teams so that we can look at these. And I would just do that. I would just put together basic information, biographic about the person, their immigration history and travel history, so that we can start piecing together the case. And just do that. You don't have to know all the options. You don't have to know where to start in terms of A, B, C, D, E. But what you're doing is you're providing the attorney and the legal team with what they need to do in order to put, all their resources and talents and expertise together into finding realistic options.
That's great, Lorraine. And I don't know if you have a website. I can imagine that you do. Like, would it be good to have like checklists there that people can just go to and be like, okay, to get all this together before they approach a lawyer like you or someone to help them, just to help them gather those things? Is that what you mean?
Yes, absolutely. And the other point, I know it was very difficult to hear Professor Lilo speak, but what he just said was that they are funded. And myself and Stephen are knights and dames ourselves of this organization. They are funded to now go back to the Ukraine and meet with those that would like to depart temporarily and escort them and help them out. So we also have a real set of dates where there are peacekeepers going in that can accompany them to go. So I think that so I'll put the website information in and our contact information, and we're just here to help and truly honored to do so. And there is help, and don't get overwhelmed. Just do that. Just jot down the information of those that you know that need help.
That's amazing, Lorraine. Thank you so much for clearly explaining that. And if any of the people that are working in Ukraine have their company also has offices in the States or Canada or something like that, like they're a bigger company, do you know if those companies are able to help in a way?
Yes. Yeah. I'm Canadian, probably tell from my accent. Canada has received some recommendations on how to improve their processes to help the Ukrainian people. I would actually venture to say that just before I jumped on, I called one of my friends who runs a very successful tech company in San Francisco, and I said, how many Ukrainians would you hire right now? And he said, give me 10 resumes. So there are people out there who want to help. So, and I don't, the Canadian system is a little bit different. There is absolutely other options there. We do Canadian immigration too. I would just say that the resources and the thousands and thousands of jobs that have already been secured right now for Ukrainian nationals coming into the US is very exemplary. So I would potentially start there.
Well, Lorraine and Steve, I especially want to thank you for your contribution to the conversation tonight. The information that you just shared, the specifics, the fact that there's actual dates and ability to get people out or to be of service in the ways that you're describing. Please, Lorraine, put your email, your web address in the chat as well for others. I think you had your phone number there before, but the email and website would be useful. And, I just really, again, I really, the information you shared is obviously immensely important. And I agree that there's, like Anna said, there's so much that people are facing to have to deal with that is like, where do you start? And it's easy for me to say, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? But that's easy to just spit out that comment. But when you are facing what these courageous people are facing in the country or out of the country, I can't even begin to imagine the challenges that they're dealing with. And our hearts and thoughts and prayers go out to everyone. And I really want to thank all of you tonight that are with us tonight for your commitment to a world that works for everyone and that there be peace on the planet. I just will close with a quote from William Faulkner. Never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice. If people all over the world would do this, it would change the earth. So thank you all for being with us tonight. And so our Conversations for Peace continues. We look forward to seeing you all again in a future program. And meanwhile, God bless you all and may peace be with you. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.